So there's so many different places to begin, but as you're watching the last month unfold, why don't you tell me some of your takeaways right now?
Well, I'm struck with how many things are happening so quickly, and I'm struck with how little regard the administration seems to have for the law.
Elaborate on that, expound on that.
Yeah, I mean, many of the things the administration has done are overtly illegal, and some of those things are things they could have done legally but just didn't bother to do, or they could have done something very similar within the bounds of the law, but they just didn't bother to do it. That's resulted in a lot of court orders against them, and to date, their compliance with those court orders is pretty minimal.
Maybe, people who are like, well, it's against the law. What do you mean by that? What have they done that is supremely against the law? Let me ask it that way.
Well, I mean, one thing is that the Office of Personnel Management, the central personnel office of the federal government, um, ordered the firing of probationary employees. Those workers don't work for OPM, they work for individual agencies, and that's a decision under federal law that belongs to those agencies. They also fired people who were not provisionally working for the federal government, but had just been promoted. So they're longtime government employees, but their promoted position is probationary. Rather than sending them back to their prior position, which they could do, they just fired them outright. They're also sending people notices saying you're being fired because of a bad performance review when they've had no performance reviews. It's a mass letter. There certainly are people out there that have had bad performance reviews, but you can't know that without looking at someone's individual file, and they're not bothering to do that.
I think a lot of people want to know, does this hold up? And um, will these people be reinstated? What does the law say here? I think a lot of people are so confused by that.
And the law says that the federal government has to go through certain procedures and has to make plans to handle its employees. This was put in place to keep the federal service from subsidizing one or another political party. Your party wins, you hire all your campaign workers and fire whoever was there before you. Then I win, I fire all your people and put in my campaign workers. Probably neither your campaign workers nor mine are very good at doing the people's work. And so we end up wasting a lot of money on what amount to political subsidies. We got rid of that system over a century ago, so that we would have professionals who know what they're doing, carrying out the people's business, whoever the top elected officials are. And they are disregarding those rules and taking us back to a patronage system that is wasteful, inefficient, and corrupt.
And that's ironic because there's a department called the Department of Government Efficiency.
It is. This is remarkably inefficient. Doing these mass firings without reasons, without plans, is going to cost the government a lot of money. We're going to pay these workers anyway. This way, we're going to have to pay back salary awards, but we aren't going to get the work from them. Much better if you're going to pay people anyway to have them work for you.
Many people across the country have voted for reducing the size. I don't think anybody realized how they were going to get there, but a lot of people voted for this. And so what do you tell those folks that are like, okay, he's doing it, he's keeping his campaign promise?
I don't think anyone promised chaos. I think there was a promise that this could be done with fewer workers, and with less expenditures in a thoughtful way. The argument was that we have unnecessary bulk. But what we're seeing here is chaotic, it's unplanned. The people we're losing are some of the highest skilled people and some of the highest performing people. And I don't think anyone voted for that because no one was promising it.
So you believe not only are we going to have to pay these people, but how many lawsuits are the government? I mean, how many how many lawyers are the government have to pay to contend with some of the lawsuits that are they're already filed?
Quite a lot.
Yeah.
Quite a lot. This is going to consume a lot of government's time for a lot of time. It's going to consume the court's time, which means that you're, in my case, are going to get shoved to the bottom of the list because they're going to be handling this. We're going to pay a lot in damages while getting no work. We're breaching contracts. We're going to have to pay breach of contract damages and again, not get what we paid for. There's a way to do it, but it involves making a plan, knowing what you're doing. We had this situation a couple weeks ago where someone in DOGE didn't know what the scientists keeping our nuclear weapons safe were all about and fired them and deleted their emails so that when they figured out what they'd done, they didn't have a good way of contacting them to try to hire them back. No one voted for that.
How do you I don't know, it's a simple question, but where does this go? How do you see this playing out, over the next year, over the next several years?
Well, we've made the federal government a much less desirable employer. There are lots of people who are working for the federal government for much less than they could command in the private sector, in part because the federal government was thought to be a dependable, reliable employer. We've lost that, and we're either going to have less competent workers or pay them more because the federal government is now such a risky employer. Same problem with the contractors. We have gotten bargains on contracts because the federal government always pays its bills. Well, it isn't paying its bills now. And so we're going to have to start paying risk premiums in our contracts, which we've never done before.
How do you, is this, is this the best time to be teaching at any university, particularly at a law school?
Well, I will say I was teaching the Impoundment Control Act the day after the OMB launched its freeze of federal funds. My students thought I must be prescient to put it on the syllabus on exactly that day. But overall, no one wants to be involved in this kind of chaos. We have legitimate political disagreements, which we should debate and decide upon. We don't need this chaos.
How does this go down? I know your focus is on constitutional law, administrative law. How does this to you, as I kind of asked a little bit how you teach this, but how does this go down in the history books for you?
Very disappointing. There are a lot of things that both parties have agreed upon, certainly since World War II, really earlier than that, that have now been broken. We had adamant disagreements, but we also had some mutual trust. And a lot of that's gone. We're going to have a more politicized, less competent federal civil service. There'll be more mistakes made, whether that's infected meat getting onto market or improper air traffic control practices or any number of other kinds of problems are going to be more common. And no one's going to be able to trust what we're told by these federal agencies because they're going to be so politicized. They're politicized now Republican, but next time the Democrats come in, because these protections against civil service are gone, they're going to get politicized Democrat, and no one will believe those people, and they shouldn't.
All right, David, anything else you'd like to add? Anything else you think I missed?
I think those are the big points.